Israel 365 Action is running in the upcoming World Zionist Congress elections, known as the Parliament of the Jewish People. Held every 5 years, these elections help determine how nearly $1 billion is allocated to support Israel and Jewish communities around the world. The Israel 365 Action slate is focused on reinforcing Zionist values, stopping the push for a Palestinian state, strengthening the bond between Jews and Christians, and defending Judea and Samaria, especially in the wake of October 7th. With us now in studio today to share more about their platform are Tila Falic, the lead candidate on the Israel 365 Action slate, and Rabbi Pesach Wolicki, the slate spokesperson. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the elections that are taking place now, what are these elections and why are they so important? I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, there's an annual allocation of $1 billion of Jewish communal funds that gets distributed for Zionist education, Zionist programming, and all sorts of projects in Israel every year. So it's $5 billion for every 5-year election cycle. It's a lot of money on the line. And this money, when I say it's the Jewish people's money, these are funds that are generated by the assets of the Jewish people, our grandparents and great-grandparents who went around collecting money in tzedakah boxes in order to build this nation and purchase the land that became the state of Israel, set up these institutions, and it's still from those assets that this money is generated. And for far too long, the World Zionist Congress, because of the constitution of it, with different legacy organizations and all the Jewish communities worldwide participating in these elections, has been slanted to the left. And especially after October 7th, we see it as such a critically important thing to turn this around. Most Jews don't know how important these elections are. They think it's just some Jewish organizations getting together in a room and passing resolutions. But so many big issues that affect the lives of Jews in communities all over the world end up being directly affected by the outcome of these World Zionist Congress elections. And it's really a way for Jews around the world, and especially right now we're talking about in America, a third of the Congress is really seats from America, can participate in what happens in Israel.
Now, Tila, what is the Israel 365 Action slate? What do you guys stand for? What makes it different from the other parties that are running?
I think that we're the only one, as far as I know, that is openly calling for sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And the idea is not just for it to be recognized, but also to promote the values of the biblical homeland and support the communities that are already there and to help them expand and strengthen the communities of Yehuda v'Shomron, Judea and Samaria, in a way that all Jews are involved in the building and expansion of these beautiful communities.
And why was this such an important position to take for this slate, for the party?
Well, you know, we had an event in Washington, D.C. a number of months ago, and, you know, for Judea and Samaria, where we brought together a few hundred Christian and Jewish leaders, you know, to speak out against the calls for a Palestinian state and on behalf of sovereignty. And there was a reporter there from Reuters who asked me, you know, he said to me, "Why are you so focused on Judea and Samaria?" And I said, one of the lessons we have to learn from October 7th, but really from Zionism in general and the direction the Jewish community has taken, is that if we don't have ancestral historical rights to Hebron and Beit Lechem and Shiloh, then we don't have rights to Haifa and Tel Aviv either. The bottom line is that the rest of the world sees us as interlopers, as colonialists. And if we cede the ground and say, oh yeah, we're willing to give up parts of our land because there's some other people that has some legitimate national rights here, if we're willing to do that, if we're willing to give hope to our enemies to believe that they can control part of our land, then in the end of the day, we lose the moral argument and we shouldn't really be here at all. So the bottom line is that we have to assert our sovereignty. It is only through the Arabs, the so-called Palestinians, getting the message that there will not be a Palestinian state, that the terrorism will cease, and they will eventually come to terms with it. The path to peace actually comes through Israel asserting sovereignty and putting an end to this once and for all.
Now, Tila, your tagline on this campaign is vote to stop a Palestinian state. Why is this such a core component? I know you spoke a little bit about it, but if you could elaborate more on why this is a core component of the platform for this party.
So historically, there's already been different attempts for a Palestinian state. In 1947, the UN partition plan called for Jordan, for the Palestinians, or Arabs at the time, and Israel was for the Jews. It doesn't mean that one shouldn't be able to live in the other, which when you call for a two-state solution today, it actually disqualifies the ability of Jews to be able to live in the Palestinian side, but we have 2 million Arabs, I believe, that live in Israel, that are citizens of Israel with all kinds of rights within Israel. So we've tried this already with Jordan and Israel. We also tried it again with the Gaza disengagement, where we tried to give the Palestinians a land, and that didn't turn out so well, not for them and not for us. So in reality, if we care about the safety of Jews, and we care about actually the safety of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, and to be able to give access to the Christians to the holy sites and all religions to be able to get to their holy sites, it could only be under one Jewish state, and that's Israel, because under Israel, everybody can flourish with whatever it is that they believe in, and real coexistence comes through living together, not by separating people.
You know, you bring up an interesting point about access to holy sites, and in fact, Christians and Jews are prohibited from some of the religious sites, even under Israeli control, when we're looking at Al-Aqsa, the Temple Mount, for example. One of the things that you guys focus on in this platform is enhancing Jewish-Christian relations. Why was that a core component of this platform for you guys as well, Pesach?
Well, especially since October 7th, but it's really been for the last 4 decades or so, it's become very clear that our only truly steadfast friends who aren't just in this for some temporary transactional, realpolitik reason, but our only true friends of Israel are Bible-believing Christians who see the state of Israel the same way Bible-believing Jews see the state of Israel, as the fulfillment of the long-awaited return of the nation of Israel to our homeland after thousands of years of exile. And those Christians stand with us firmly. And for far too long, the Zionist establishment has been very uneasy about evangelical Christians. They kind of keep them at arm's length because so many of the Jews in leadership positions lean to the left and lean to progressive politics, and they're uncomfortable with them, or they have some invented fantasy about why Christians support Israel, which I tell you as someone who's been involved in Jewish-Christian relations for many, many years, it's news to Christians when I tell them, all the weird reasons that Jews think that they support Israel. They support Israel very simply because they say, oh, God fulfills his promises. The Jewish people are returning to their land. It turns out that they still do have a covenant with God, and they will be with us long term. And because the Jewish leadership, the establishment, has been so uneasy about the relationship with Christians, they've kind of pushed them away. And now we're seeing polling that shows that the younger generation of evangelical Christians are less inclined to be pro-Israel than the earlier generation. They're not anti-Israel, but they're kind of ambivalent about it. And that represents a massive failure by the Jewish people. If for 40 years there's been this growing Christian Zionist movement, and all that's happening now is that it's aging and the younger generation has not been engaged, it's because we have not invested in the relationship. And we see this as a geopolitical necessity for Israel to invest in the Jewish-Christian relationship, to enhance that relationship, because it is the reason why America stands with Israel. It's not because of a bunch of Jews in New York. It's really because of the Christians in Oklahoma and Louisiana and Texas and everywhere who support Israel. That's why America's pro-Israel. We need to invest in this relationship and be intentional about it so that the next generation of Christians are as supportive of Israel as their parents.
All right, Tila, we're unfortunately out of time, but before I let you guys go, I want to know how our viewers can support you. How can they learn more about this slate, and how can they vote?
It's actually very simple. There will be a QR code at the end of this report, but you can go on Israel365action.org.com, and vote. Vote in the World Zionist Congress. This is a very important election for everybody. We're going to allocate funds for all, and at the end of the day, if we see where the Trump administration is leading and where they are looking for their next big decisions to be, it will be in Judea and Samaria. So let's get on board and everybody vote for Israel Action 365.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Tila, Falic, and Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.